This podcast is part of the Midwest Podcast Network. Find out more about our other shows and how to support our network at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Welcome to Gone to Texas, a podcast about AMC's Preacher. My name is Alex, and I have not read any of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
My name is Nick, and I have read all of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
My name is Lance, and I have read all of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
Today we will be discussing Season 2, Episode 11 of the AMC series titled Backdoors. While we will not be spoiling any of the comic and by extension any future plot lines of the show, we will be discussing the details of the series through Season 2, Episode 11, so pause this and go catch up before you listen to the rest of the episode. You can find more episodes of our podcast at g2tpodcast.com. We're also G2T Podcast on Twitter, and you can send feedback to g2tpodcast@gmail.com. That's the letter G, number 2, letter T, podcast@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our podcast and share your thoughts on AMC's Preacher so we can read them on our show. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Preacher or our podcast, much like these wonderful people did. Mike wrote in, as he always does, with a lot of fantastic points and longer points, but I wanted to pick this out of his email. He said, the difference between TV Jesse and Book Jesse as far as the quest for God is that Book Jesse has the moral, it's the right thing to do reason, while TV Jesse is more selfish, wondering why God has deserted him. His moral motive is there, but the personal aspect is overriding it right now, and once he faces those demons, so to speak, he will realize how selfish he is being, and his quest will remain, but his purpose will be different. I think that's probably a pretty good estimation as to what's going on between that difference there.
Yeah, even in this episode, there's actually that pretty much addresses that.
Starr's made that connection with Jesse's life and it being a more personal quest for him, obviously. But
and Tulip kind of calls him out on being selfish.
Yeah, that too. So good point, Mike. Thank you very much. Bruce wrote in as well. He said the way the show is driving a wedge between the main three is something I'm not entirely sure about, as it feels a little closer to typical TV drama than what they've been doing so far. I'm willing to give it a bit of a pass for now, as we don't quite know where it's going, and it's hardly the worst example I've seen of that sort of thing. I used to watch Arrow, after all. I figured
Didn't we all?
Yeah. Lance, did you watch any Arrow?
I didn't, but a friend of mine described the middle seasons of Arrow as great seasons, but not. Maybe I'm wrong, but like the first season, I think he said was garbage, and then like seeing.
Nick and I think, are of the other mind.
Oh, yeah?
The first half of season 1 is pretty trashy, but the second half is really good.
The first half of season 1 has more source music than like MTV does.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, than like an Underworld movie does.
Oh, man.
It's got so much source music to where
the first pilot could be its own, like the pilot could be its own soundtrack.
It's on like now that's what I call music. I remember texting Alex and then be like, you guys have to watch the pilot of Arrow. There's so much source music. No, but after the mid-season break of season 1, it gets really good. Yeah. Like it's a great season after that. And season 2, top to bottom, I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then
it had
3
good villains, right? Something like that.
Everything's good. I mean, the production value is like consistently solid for TV.
Yeah.
They know how to lean into like small sets, but like, just keep things dark and work with what you have. Stephen Amell is very compelling throughout. I think he's even good from the onset, but he only gets better.
The thing that I liked the most about that era of Arrow is the fact that they would deliver on questions.
Yes.
Like it felt like they were answering questions they were raising at the beginning of the season, probably like 6 episodes in.
Yeah.
And
it's good, brisk TV.
It was very satisfyingly paced, for sure. But
it does have good villains, and there's a little bit of schmaltz and some kind of stupid drama, but you kind of let it go because you're like, it's kind of part and parcel.
Yep.
It just comes with it. But it's a fun show. Honestly, I would recommend everybody watch season 1 of Arrow because you're in for a really fun, like if you know going into that the first like 6 or 7 episodes are pretty doofy, but you kind of need them and you'll laugh along with it and just stick through because it's worth it. Yeah. But then season 3, I watched the first half and I was like, I don't think this is for me anymore.
Season 3 is only worth watching if you're going to watch The Flash as well.
And by then The Flash had come out and The Flash is way better.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yep.
Yeah.
But anyway,
the pilot of The Flash is nuts. It's so good.
we'll save that for the CW.
Yes,
Midwest
our
CW
giant
nerds.
CW verse.
Yes.
Don't wait up for that one.
Bruce also wrote, the intro with the Jesus sex and the scene with Humperdoo just show that Rogan and co. are willing to go places that nobody thought they would. And on basic cable, too. This is especially amusing since HBO supposedly killed their own attempt as a preacher series over the religious aspects of the plot.
Yeah.
Also, the idea of Judas waiting with the getaway donkeys was just hilarious to me. I thought that was pretty good as well. So thank you, Bruce, for writing in. And then Original Joseph wrote in with a pretty long email, but I do want to read it all. So I'll get on with it now. Hey, Alex. I wish that I had written in after watching Dirty Little Secret because it made me update my thoughts on the show's on Show Jesse's motivation, and then you guys open the show with that. Here are a couple thoughts to take or leave regarding religion. First, I think you guys and Seth Rogen are missing something about how I think most modern Christians see religion. Both Catholic and Protestants have really strong themes about surrendering ultimate control to God, admitting that your life isn't something that's ever going to be under your control, and deciding to have faith that while God's plan is never understandable, that he's ultimately in control and acting out of love. If you don't believe me, go watch The Shack when that movie comes out. It was the biggest hit ever among Christians, and that's exactly what it's about. So my guess is that your average American Christian just wouldn't believe that they had been abandoned by God. If they had learned that the angels were real and that the angels didn't know where God was, they would assume it was some part of God's plan or even a test. Both the Old Testament and the New are full of this. God commands Abraham to kill Isaac and then takes it back. He lets Satan absolutely fuck up Job. He not only lets Jacob steal Esau's birthright, but actually showers blessing on Jacob and his descendants. And then Jesus shows up and tells parable after parable, like the prodigal son, each of which says you're not in charge and you don't get to decide what's fair. God is and does, and you need to stop telling God what to do and start trusting what he knows. So if I learned that God was hiding from the angels, I'd update my beliefs to add that I now had evidence that angels, God, heaven, and hell were probably real, but I'd still have faith that wherever God was and whatever he was doing, it was probably still for the best. You can see some of that with Jesse, who's desperate to believe that Genesis is part of some sort of larger plan and not just a weird thing that happened because God decided not to pay attention. On Jesse's motivation, I guess we can stop there real quick. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that religious stuff?
I think that's fantastic.
It's great, yeah.
That's why I felt the need to really write in, because none of us are particularly religious people at the moment, or but I grew up Catholic and I should have known how to say Esau, but I didn't.
I also grew up Catholic, and this is what I did recently. I wanted to read the Bible. And so I found a children's book with pictures on the Bible, just because I knew it was shorter and a little more simpler. More simpler.
Yeah, you made the right decision there.
It's a little simpler to grasp. And you know what? It actually wasn't much simpler to grasp, because it was still kind of like you left parts out, of course.
Yeah, I feel like the omission of a lot of important information is there.
Yeah.
It just tries to cut to the moral.
But the pictures were nice.
That's good.
I think that's a really interesting observation about the state of Jesse's mind and maybe where Jesse is as a character. And this is, I think, where some of my comic background has clouded my judgment a little bit, because I know the book's details about God and God's thoughts and feelings, and we've talked about this on the show, how he's kind of like, well, I don't like where things are headed, so I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And Jesse kind of has hinted at that as well on the show. But I think if Jesse, in the wake of the Carlos stuff and everything with Tulip, that he probably did say, you know what? The only way eventually that he could kind of rectify this whole thing in his mind is maybe to just give it up and say, I don't have control over any of this shit. I'm not in control of my life or my destiny. And so maybe in that regard, he did go, full Catholic, or I guess he's not. What denomination is Jesse in this? He seems kind of Baptist-y, being from the South.
Yeah, I can't. I wasn't. I guess it was All Saints Congregation. Was there anything on the sign that mentioned what?
There was all kinds of stuff on the sign.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the description that Joseph's giving of in his words, I think he said modern Christian who is following that belief that, you know, you don't have control and you have to just give up control to God and understand that he has a plan. If that's the way Jesse's acting, or if that's how he is kind of governed by that belief system now, that's pretty interesting. And I could see why he's so irritating to Tulip sometimes, because she is obviously the polar opposite of that.
Yeah.
However, I think what we would see, you know, to go back to that idea of if this did happen, if we found out on Earth that, you know, God was gone, I think we would still see a lot of the reaction that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Even from like true religious folk, because I think there is a difference between those who walk the walk and talk the talk and those who don't. So those who, or even people who might think that they have that level of faith, but they don't, because we're, as humans, very good at tricking ourselves into believing things if it makes us feel better.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that there would be true believers who would say that's okay, like it's all part of his plan, or true deniers, as people would, you know, the clash between humans would become horrible as well, because you'd have people saying like, you're just delusional, like God has clearly left us. And those people would be panicking and freaking out, and that would be like some of the stuff like we saw in Anvil, where maybe they were churchgoers, but they turned into scum anyway.
Yeah.
At the end. What we would probably see, as he's describing, like true believers who say, it's all good, we're good.
Well, but there's also those people, like, I guess that's the thing, is that in the show, we've got somebody like Eugene and we have somebody like Mike earlier in this season that say that it feels like God isn't listening anymore. So there are people like that once learning that God is no longer there, and then they can confirm with their own experience of like, oh, it hasn't felt like he's been there. I think that could maybe be what leads to Anvil, like the people in Anvil going full debauchery, like he's actually not there. They don't know where he is. But yeah, and that's not to say that in Joseph's interpretation of things or thoughts about things that there wouldn't be people there that are like, well, this is a test. Because that could still fall into that category. But my guess is that, like, in some world where you can feel whether or not God is listening, like, I think that also adds another layer of different reaction to that news.
Sure.
So
that's part of what makes, I think, religion such an endlessly debated subject, is that ultimately how you believe is how you believe, and why you believe that way is why you believe that. And it's the reason that the debate will never end. Yeah. You know?
Have you guys seen Religulous? Bill Maher's Religulous?
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's a pretty good movie. It's.
I think I rented it like 8 times when I worked at the video store, but never. Same with Jesus Camp. I rented that a bunch of times too. And you can watch that.
Oh yeah.
I heard that was also very interesting.
Yeah, give it a watch, because there's one scene in particular where, you know, he's just arguing with some girl in some shop or something like that, and she's like, "I know God is there," and then he's like, "How do you know?" He's like, "How do you know?" And then she's like, "Because I know." And that's all this lady's saying. And she just keeps on going back and forth. And I know he's there. I know it. And now you have Jesse who like knows that God isn't there.
Yeah.
And that's the crisis that he's going through.
Yeah.
So like knowing in your heart is one thing, but knowing for a fact is another.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
The description sounds so mean. It sounds like such a mean, because I know he's making fun of her.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that you're supposed to laugh at her, but you're kind of like, well, you know, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What's ultimately, there's no purpose. Like debating, unless that person's belief is causing them to, you know, harm someone in some way. But other than that, let them think what they want to think. You know.
Yeah, he definitely made fun of her a lot. It's being like, "What, have you seen him? Does he write you letters, stuff like that?" So he was definitely
Bill Maher's very antagonistic.
He is.
So.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So Joseph goes on to say, Jesse's motivations. My guess prior to Dirty Little Secrets was that Jesse wants God in charge because he wants there to be a reason for living, and he wants the good rewarded and the evil punished. He has a lot of contempt for evildoers, including Cassidy and Tulip, and probably himself, so I'm reading him as wanting there to be justice in the universe, and probably wanting to believe that he himself will be punished for praying for his father's death. I think he's outraged at some level that he could do something that left him feeling so guilty, and that there's no way for him to process that guilt unless there's someone to hold him accountable, then presumably forgive him. After Dirty Little Secrets, I think there's also a strong theme that Jesse sees God as filling the same role as his father did, telling him what is right and wrong, comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable, etc. That's sort of the same thing, but it's much more critical of religion. In other words, Jesse needs God not because he needs actual God, but because he needs a father. And without his actual father, he turns to God. That would be consistent with the theme of divine fallibility that we've seen since season 1. If the angels are screw-ups and hell has technical problems and Jesus' descendant on earth is Humperdew, then the story isn't necessarily about Jesse realizing that God isn't what he wants, but instead what he needs. But it's about Jesse realizing that his father is a fallible person, and apparently so is God. That's a very Fight Club sentence right there. The journey of a young man realizing that his parents are people and not gods is a decent story, but it's fundamentally critical of religion because it implies that religion is a lie we need to tell ourselves until we are mature enough to handle the truth, even if it ends with Jesse in an adult relationship with God, the way we all hope to be with our parents or our kids. The journey of a young man realizing that he needs to trust God is fundamentally sympathetic to religion, since it ends with Jesse respecting God as God rather than as a peer. I think you could tell either story well, but my guess is that they're headed towards the first one. And then he wrote in an additional 2 times. He said, to add a little bit more, now that I've heard the rest of the podcast, I'm not sure why people aren't protesting. I don't think Christ's descendant being an inbred idiot is any worse a comment on religion than the original idea that heaven is working directly with a murderous organization like the Grail, for what that's worth. Also, I want to write a defense of the Victor story. I think that maybe because I'm not looking forward to the upcoming story moments and I don't have a developed vision of the characters, I thought that it was really good, but I'll save that for a week where I have less to write. And then he wrote in that 3rd time and said, okay, last one. Wow, I feel like I nailed Jesse in my pre-show email. Now that I've seen Backdoors, number 1, I love that the show keeps going deeper into who Jesse is and each time recontextualizes him and causes me to reinterpret him without contradicting anything I've seen before. I love it, but I wonder how many more times they can do it. I feel like it's forcing Tulip and Cassidy's development into the margins. The Denise storyline is fascinating, but it feels like they're stalling it. And then he said, yeah. As number 2, as your religious listener, let me say the one that we have out there. Thank you for being. No, I don't know about most of the other people that listen, but he says, as your religious listener, let me say that the tape scene was jaw-dropping. It's such a violation to take something so intimate and private and share it with an organization as corrupt as the Grail. Then it means that heaven itself is essentially corrupt. I'm honestly fascinated to find out where the story is going.
Very cool.
Fantastic points, Joseph. It was so good that I just had to go through all of it because it puts a lot of points together that we couldn't have put together, the 3 of us, and it just, I don't know, I think it's a very unique perspective.
Absolutely. I think he made a great point about Jesse's relationship with God and in some ways being like a lot of ours, that you have that father figure, so to speak, there to kind of absorb the blows for you and help you make decisions until you come of age and can do that for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I don't want to say unfortunately or fortunately, I can't weigh in either way, but I think that's the way religion is for a lot of us. I feel like a lot of people grow up going to church when you're like a little kid because your parents feel like they need to instill that in you because it was instilled in them when they were kids. But the purpose doesn't necessarily mean continuing on in that relationship as you mature and come of age. It's almost like a springboard into like making good decisions and helping people
having
who are
a conscience
needy.
And
yes, which is good. I mean, if that helps people build that into their character, but I think it's admirable to continue that into adulthood if that speaks to you. And I think that a lot of people get ashamed and they get turned away from religion because they think like it's uncool or they think it's unwise to not be more engaged with your life directly, or think like, your decisions have ramifications that can't just be like wished away, or prayed away, so to speak. So it is interesting, and I really glad we have a listener who is our religious listener, as he says.
Yes.
He'll be able to provide some more insight down the line.
Yeah.
I mean, I think religion is one of those things that with your friends and your peers, it sneaks up on you. You don't necessarily know their religious background. You don't know how involved they or their family or their friends are in church.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I mean, When I was in college and I was discovering Reddit and all that kinds of crap, I would probably describe myself more as like a militant atheist in the lightest manner that I possibly could. And I would get into arguments because you're that dude who's had just like a touch of like knowledge and logic and sense and that kind of thing. And like nowadays I've softened on that quite a bit, just in terms of like figuring out, even in terms of like astrology and people that talk about crystals and they get the acupuncture done and everything like that. I'm like, if it has meaning to me, then it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about it. And I think that's true of religion. I think that's true of a lot of things. And so I'm happy that I've backed away from my pike and
from your edgelord days.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's not worth anybody's time to listen to me or to have to argue their own thoughts on those kinds of things. So
I remember when I created my Reddit account in 2009, something like that.
Yeah.
And it automatically subscribes you to
atheism,
to many subreddits, and atheism is one of them. And
not anymore now, I think.
I immediately unsubscribed from it because I was like, this is outrageous.
Yes.
I was like, nobody who posts on this can ever get angry at a Christian or anybody religious for wanting to talk about their belief, because I'm like, you are 10 times worse and 10 times pushier than anyone I've ever met because you're rude.
Yep.
A lot of religious folks, if they want to talk to you, say, you know what, I'm good. I'm not interested. Thank you for your time. We'll move along. But these people, like, it was their mission to try to be mean and act smarter than people. And I was like, whoa, guy. Like, this, it was just crazy. I've never been so repulsed from an online community as I have been. You know, Grand Theft Auto Online has gotten close. But these people it was unreal. And I've never gone back to even, like, out of curiosity, because I'm like, it's just, what a mess. And that's the unfortunate thing. I think a lot of people on both sides, I think a lot of religious people too, condescend non-believers.
Yeah.
But it's horrible when it's fun to talk about and say, like, I believe this because X, and you know, in a polite forum.
Yeah.
But people take it so personally, and they try to win the argument. And like religion and politics there's a reason those are the two things you don't talk about at parties, because you're never going to win.
Nope.
It doesn't matter.
Yep. For sure. I could still learn it in the politics
well,
sphere,
you know, these days the line between right and wrong is becoming more clear.
Yeah, that's true.
Clearer than it ever was. And that's a podcast for another day.
Yes, it is.
That's for when we're
the Midwest Politics
15 years
podcast.
from now. Yeah.
I tried to goad Tim into starting a politics podcast with me, and he said, not in a million years.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
And I totally understand. But
yeah. Well,
anyway.
no, those are great emails.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who wrote in. Without any further ado, let's get into the episode. In the teaser, we finally see the source of the ominous sound cue whenever Jesse sees something about Angelville. It's a crank being used to pull a coffin out of an algae-filled lake. Two men open up the coffin to reveal teenage Jesse, who is pulled out to kneel before a woman, potentially his grandmother. She asks Jesse what his name is, and he replies Jesse, but she wants him to say his last name. He spitefully says Custer, and the woman orders him back into the coffin. Obviously, we find out later that it was his grandmother, but even then, I kind of assumed that it was.
Yep.
So, yeah, we finally know what that was.
As soon as it showed it, what did you think?
I was like, well, yeah, of course. That's what. Like, the problem is, like, thinking of it as a crank. Like, because you were like, you know what that noise is, you just haven't made that connection. For some reason, I was not like I wanted a different word for it or something. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I've been hearing. So it's not, you know, I don't necessarily feel stupid, but it's kind of.
No.
It was a weird.
The answer was more simpler than you thought?
No, it's not. It's not that it was more simpler, but it was kind of just.
I'm gonna ride that one out for a while. So.
Yeah, go for it.
I guess that is it in a way. It's not like maybe I was thinking it's got to be more than just the crank. It's like what's
like
being
a hand
cranked.
winch.
Yeah. Like I don't know. So anyway,
this was so awesome.
I told this story
and
to
it looked
Lance.
crude too, which I love too.
Yeah.
It looked really bad and like gross.
Like that film had been lost for in the dust for years and then cleaned up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. It was good.
Yeah.
The reason this episode is late is because I was dealing with a flooded basement, which is nothing in comparison to what's going on with the hurricane in Texas right now. So I'm not complaining about that in any way, shape, or form. I just had to be a little late on the podcast.
That's funny. Yeah, when I said to yesterday, my fiance was like, "Are you doing the podcast?" And I was like, "No, we're postponing it today." She's like, "Why? What's going on?" I said, "Oh, Alex's basement flooded." And she said, "Call Houston." And I was like, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, I'll tell Alex. Never mind, we're podcasting.
Yes, but anyway, I was downstairs pumping water out of the basement, and I checked my watch. I saw that I got a notification. It was an email from Mike that just had this. Let me read you what the subject line was. Yeah, it's just Y with a bunch of A's and 2 exclamation points, and then the body says the coffin. Yeah, goosebumps.
Yeah.
And that was as soon as the episode started. Like it was at like 9:05.
So he ruined it for you, is what you're saying?
A little bit, but I was like, okay, clearly, like it's the beginning of the episode. It's not like it's really that much of a spoiler.
I saw that one drop in too, and I didn't watch it yet, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
here we go.
But yeah, no. I still don't know what it means, really. Like, obviously, it's Jesse's maternal grandmother, like that family breaking him, but I don't know for what purpose.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. But
yeah, I can't wait for Angelville, for more Angelville. Like the coffin, and did they ever? It was perfect. Mm-hmm. It was awesome.
What was it? Did it seem like picture perfect, or is it like a good interpretation of the coffin? Or
yeah, there's an aspect of Jesse's characterization that's been missing from the show thus far, and we're not going to get it at all at this point. We've talked about it in the past, but I don't want to really mention it now. But it's really sucky that it's not there because it plays into the coffin stuff a little bit, and we'll talk about it further down the line. Maybe at the season wrap up or something if I remember, which I won't because I don't remember things.
I'll try to remember.
Yeah, it was very cool though. It was cool to finally get that payoff.
Yeah,
I was like, thank God it wasn't in like the season finale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lance, any thoughts on the coffin?
Oh no, it's great. I mean, yeah.
This is also great background for viewers that haven't read the book because you know that Jesse's been through some shit.
Yeah.
Obviously with his dad getting shot in front of him, kind of big deal.
Him praying to make it happen, as we'll deal with later.
But I mean, this coffin like torture.
Yeah.
It's actually way worse in the book too. Like he comes out of that coffin in the show looking like he maybe got a little sweaty down there. But like they in the book, the duration of time he's down there for is alarming, and he's underwater. I mean, it's sealed. Actually, in the show, I was like, that thing doesn't look like it would be watertight. No. But in the book, they do a better job of like showing, exactly the situation. You see the tubes down there to feed air to him and shit. But in the scene where Tulip and Cassidy are kind of yelling at him, they're kind of ganging up on him and saying like, what have you lost or something like that?
Yeah.
What have you had to deal with? And I was like, this just goes to show you that you don't necessarily know in general what other people have been through. But I was like, they don't know the horrors that Jesse endured as a boy. And he just takes it in the show, which I think is cool. We'll talk, I guess we'll get to that scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like the show, as gross as it was in the show, it still felt kind of clean compared to the book.
Yeah, obviously I assume that he was down there for a while. I guess you don't really know.
Right.
But his shirt was a little yellowed, but I was like, clearly there are things that would occur in that coffin that
all the
they
things.
would probably want to show, but then got notes that were like, you need to dial this back a bit or something
Perhaps,
like that. But,
yeah, I mean, I'm glad that the moment resolved itself in the episode, that you see him finally just say Langell and like they move on, because I was like, let's just, we introduced it, let's get going. So it was that was awesome.
Yeah,
a great way to start.
What do you think of the two guys that are there?
Yeah, we don't really get much of them.
No,
but they They seem to be.
Lance and I have talked about this multiple times after recording. How we can't wait for these two characters.
Do you think we're gonna? I kind of almost get the indication, like the fact that we don't see any faces. I don't think they're gonna get cast until season.
They'll
3.
be cast for season 3,
Okay.
and these are the kind of guys where, when they announce so and so has been cast in Preacher season 3, we will immediately know. We'll know immediately. And Lance has some fan casting ideas that are very good. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, I think.
And for some reason, like I was thinking of for the grandma, there's a woman that plays. She's in so many movies, and I don't know her name, but I immediately thought of somebody.
You already began casting this
Was
role?
it Beth Grant? Yes. For some reason, Beth Grant is the person that I was
I don't
thinking
know who that is.
would be the grandmother.
Oh, okay.
Oh, she's from...
She's in Donnie Darko. She's in...
yeah. That would be pretty good, actually.
No Country. She's in Rain Man.
Yeah.
She's in lots of stuff. For some reason, she was the first person that popped into my head. But
Yeah, it's funny because his grandma wouldn't be that old because he's a boy.
Yeah.
So she probably would be like... I mean, she's not going to be like an 80-year-old lady.
Right.
At least then.
Mm.
So she would be like... I don't know. What 60s?
60s.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, there's some of that casting stuff is going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
And then cutting, obviously, to the truck getting hauled out, and Jesse just kind of watching it, and you could tell he's like reminiscing.
Well, that's in Act 1, so that was after the commercial break.
Oh, okay.
But
I'm sorry, Alex.
no, it's okay.
Go right ahead.
Act 1, an angry tulip chastises Jesse as the Sokosha is pulled out of the swamp Jesse put it in. Jesse insists that the saint would never be able to escape, but upon peering into and opening the Sokosha, the saint seems to have gotten away. Hoover and Featherstone walk into Herr Starr's office as he finishes listening to tapes with Jesse's name on them. Starr explains that the Messiah is a moron and that he wants to replace the Messiah with Jesse. Hoover doesn't believe that he's the man for the Hoover and Featherstone kind of take their new mission as in step, of course. But then Hoover doesn't believe that he's the man for the next task that he's been given, while Herr Starr agrees Hoover is all that he has for this job. Tyler is screened via a polygraph-type machine to understand if he should be in hell or not. The superintendent lackadaisically dismisses him and then receives a call from New Orleans about the saint, potentially from the Grail, is my guess there. And Eugene tries to warn Tyler that nobody is getting out of hell, but Tyler decides he wants to have fun and requests that he pull the caveman off of the TV for his last night. So, yes, Jesse clearly reliving at the swamp. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's the same swamp? Like we saw that he was traveling, like passing into Angelville on the freeway when he originally went there. I guess does it matter or not?
No, I geographically, I'm sure it's all one big swamp.
There's a question I could ask, but I will not ask it because it would be spoilery. But
okay,
just I will not look at you guys as to say this, but the idea of whether or not the grandma and presumably the uncles are still around, we don't know that yet, but
okay,
we'll see. The saint not being there, what did you guys expect?
I expected him to be there, Alan, to be honest with you.
No, I knew he wasn't going to be there. Of course, he's going to get out.
Yeah.
But how he got out, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I just figured he'd rip his way out. That's all I thought.
They'd pull it out, they'd start to raise it out, and it would just be ripped open from the inside.
Melted through the bottom of it somehow.
Yeah. No, it's pretty, anger. I think it's awesome. I honestly expected him to be in there and Jesse to have to use the word on him and say, get out and all that, and blah, blah, blah. I was looking forward to some kind of confrontation, and when he wasn't there, I was like, oh, got him. Dang.
Did you get any indication about the people that were like excavating the like I thought that they, like, for some reason it struck me as like I feel like these are Navy SEALs that Jesse like conscripted with the word.
They were underwater.
Probably just police divers.
Yeah. But
I assume he just went to the police station again and said, follow me.
Yeah, he probably does that all the time now.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's kind of the way that they wanted you to think of it too, because when they open, you see the swamp and then you see these people in this diver gear coming out.
That was a cool shot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But then obviously you realize what's going on.
Yeah.
So
You know, I'm going to say something real quick about here about like screenwriting in general or just writing. So like, did you see Thank You for Smoking? You guys see that movie?
Oh yeah.
a while ago, but
Yeah. So like, remember when like they had to explain something like on the moon or something like that? Like, wasn't Aaron Eckhart working with Rob Lowe on like a movie or something? And then like Smoking on the Moon or something like that. It was like part of a movie. This is going somewhere, I promise. So where Aaron Eckhart's like, how are we going to explain that smoking on the moon is possible? And then Rob Lowe goes, well, we'll just have a part in the script that says, thanks for inventing the thing, you know, like, so I feel like this show invented the thing that explains everything, how Jesse gets stuff done. It's like basically he just uses the word on anybody that he can to like do something for him. Yeah. And then after it's done, he's like, forget all this happened, you know? So like,
we said that too. I remember a couple weeks ago where like they've very cleverly have just been like, yep. And now,
now Jesse uses the word to do the thing.
Insert in script. Yeah. Thanks for that's fine.
But yeah, he probably just went to a tow truck company and was like, you're going to help me out. Yeah. And then once they were done, it's like, okay, you forget it.
Yeah.
Thank You for Smoking is a great movie.
It's great.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a really, really funny movie. Yeah. Again, Aaron Eckhart, he's one of those guys, should be a movie star, and yet is just on the cusp of glory.
Yes.
A phrase we've used quite a bit.
Yes.
And he keeps being in these stupid movies. I don't know. He's got to fire his agent.
Yeah.
Hire Rob Lowe as his agent.
For sure.
Hoover and Featherstone. Was there anything else at the swamp? No. Hoover and Featherstone taking the mission in stride seems exactly what I expected them to do.
Yeah.
You can see Featherstone's crush on Herr Starr starting to emerge.
It's happening.
It's pretty good. Yeah. It's happening. He's the peak of masculinity.
Yeah.
Yes, the Hoover's comeuppance for the prostitutes was pretty good. Him just being like, would you like me to get a refund? And Star's like, I'm like, and then he's like, well, the tarp then. And then he goes to pull it out. That was fantastic.
Would you like me to get a refund?
I find it interesting that that Herr Starr keeps on struggling with this thing. You know, I mean, obviously you would struggle with it if it was a traumatizing experience, but it keeps on coming up, and he's kind of trying to understand what it all means, you know. In the book, he kind of it's very comical, but I think here he's actually like thinking, oh my God, like what happened to me? You know?
Yeah. He almost had a religious experience, and he's trying to process. Yeah, because he keeps, on the one hand, he keeps talking about how it was awful, and on the other hand, he's like, but I had this moment of clarity. I had this.
He appreciates the experience. He had this
awakening, but it wasn't sexual in nature. It was just like it is strange because. Like I said initially, he seems to almost like play off the incident as though it's just an inconvenience, and he continually keeps talking about how it was like the worst thing ever, and he will never forget it. But yet he's describing in a way that's almost comical. Yeah. Hoover's great anyway.
Yeah, Hoover's so quite
funny.
Good. Yeah, and I wrote down the line when Hoover voices his concern. Herr Starr says, "I'm sure you're not." Like he's like, "I'm not sure I'm the right person." Herr Starr says, "I'm sure you're not, but the smart one is busy, and you're all that I have left."
Yeah. In that regard, is he referring to Featherstone, the smart one?
Yes. Okay. That's what I assumed.
Gotcha. I wonder where everyone else is.
In terms of,
well, I mean the rest of the Grail.
The rest of the Grail. Okay. I was thinking from it would make sense to me from a budgetary point that they probably are just.
Yeah.
Well, in the book, there's a reason it's just the two of them working with him.
Okay.
And in the show, that may be the reason, and Starr already knows it, and we just don't.
Okay.
And we have to let the season play out before we can come back around to that.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on Hoover and Featherstone?
I love everything and anything Grail in this show. Every time there's a scene with them, I just get very excited. I just can't wait. And it's like the opposite of the way I feel about Hell. When it gets to that stuff, that's usually when I'm like, suddenly I was looking at my phone and I didn't realize it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of
Hell,
Yeah. So what did you guys get out of what that examination was? Like, they're showing images that are meant to disturb, or
I don't think all of them are meant to disturb, though. I think that they're meant to elicit some sort of emotion, like any sort of emotion, whether it be like, because some of them are like nice things.
I get like, is it like a sociopathic detector or something like that to figure out if you can empathize? Or
I'll bet it is rooted in something from the real world. Although when Eugene takes it in the last image is Tom Brady, I thought that was so good. Yeah. How will this make you feel?
Well, and that's the one where it starts to waver too, and the superintendent's like about to say something, and then she gets interrupted by that.
That was so funny.
But
I am curious about that. And had I had time to go back and watch I was trying to remember. I was trying to remember the sequence to try to realize, or to try to discern if it like spelled something out, or like if there was like a theme to it. But
they seem very random.
Yeah, they do.
But
yeah, I would love to hear more about that. I'm sure there's a topic on the subreddit about it.
Yeah, that's true. We'll have to.
I generally avoid the Preacher subreddit because I don't want my thoughts to be influenced by stuff other people say, and I don't want to steal other people's thoughts.
Yeah.
I want to be wholly original.
Yep.
There you go.
For all these listeners, but also sometimes it gets a little spoilery.
Yeah.
If I haven't watched yet, or if the next week on people talk about that sort of thing.
Yeah, I also stay away from there mostly for comic spoilers.
The Twin Peaks subreddit
at the end of a
is
season, awful.
Everyone posts like things on there that it's like, man, I didn't get to that episode yet.
The Twin Peaks one?
The Twin Peaks subreddit, yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, the greatest honeypot of them all was the Westworld subreddit, because, man, I found myself not being able to look away. Like, I was like, the show is so fascinating that I have to read what other people are thinking, because I can't process my own feelings right now. I need other people to do it for me.
When you said Westworld, I thought you said West Wing for some reason.
Yes, I'm on a Rob Lowe kick.
Right.
Oh boy, no, I agree about that one as well. Any other thoughts on Act 1?
Did I say West Wing? I may have.
You might have said West Wing.
I don't think I did, though. This is like Paul Bluegrass.
Nick meant Westworld, but anyway. I don't think you did. I think you said Westworld, and I just honestly heard West Wing.
That's awesome. We both have a habit of doing that.
Yeah,
we swap out words.
Something funnier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Hell is kind of hard to care about, especially because we kind of figured out where we thought it was going pretty early on with the assistance of Mike and some of our conversations. But
yeah, it's so far. I mean, I'm glad for the breaks we get from it, but it feels like not a lot has happened. Like, we keep getting some time in hell, and we're still approximately where we were earlier in the season.
Yeah.
And that may just be because we went a few episodes without much happening there. Could totally be that.
That's true. Act 2. Jesse faces a reckoning with Tulip and Cassidy about his quest for God and the Saint of Killers. Tulip questions Jesse's motivations, and Jesse retorts, calling Tulip selfish, setting Tulip off and explaining that everything they've done has been for Jesse. And then an argument about the dog that Cassidy got for Dennis sparks Jesse's epiphany. The drawings in Humperdoo's notebook resembled the dog from the sex show earlier in the season. So Jesse heads back to the dog show and finds that there's an empty couch. Yeah, so I initially, my reading of this scene, I wasn't even thinking of the fact that Jesse had experienced trauma, as you brought up earlier, and the idea that right now in the moment and what we've been presented with, despite having that teaser with the coffin, I was like, yeah, Tulip, you're totally right. You guys are doing everything for Jesse, but it's not like Jesse hasn't experienced terrible things in his life. Yeah. And Tulip knows that too, but she's not putting two and two together. Like, she's not as privy. Like, Starr's got the like very personal prayers that he's been able to hear and listen to. Whereas Tulip, I assume, knows that Jesse's father's died. Like, she's not even thinking like she's clearly like she's not even portrayed as like intelligent enough to connect the dots that God's like a father figure for Jesse, as Joseph brought up. So like I don't necessarily know where I'm going with this, but I think it's just kind of like it's interesting to try and understand where she's coming from in that moment, because all we've seen is Jesse like dismissing her and going to do his own thing.
Pretty much, yeah.
And that looks and sounds. I don't know. Like right now, as we even talk about this, I'm kind of like, maybe this is kind of worth the journey that we've been going on with all of this. Mm-hmm. But I'll give it a couple more episodes, and maybe I can talk about it more in the season wrap up. But what did you guys think of the drama here? I know we've been tired of the apartment, but what Lance? What are your thoughts?
Everyone's tired of the apartment, apparently.
Yeah.
They all want to get.
They all want to
there.
go to Bimini.
Yeah, Bimini. Yeah. It kind of go. I didn't think. I think they tried to be quick with everything, and it kind of came off a little bit amateur with kind of like, oh, let's do this, and then like she starts packing right away, and then like Cassidy's like I also want to go, and like it just kind of felt not something like professional. What I'm trying to say is like the craft behind the show, like didn't really register with me as like this is realistic, you know. So going back to what you said about like Tulip and Jesse and how she might not know, she does know that he's gone through some horrible stuff in his life, but maybe she doesn't care. The scene that happens at the junkyard later on in this episode, I think she talks about him to Lara
does. Yep.
Featherstone and what's
Jenny.
Jenny, and says a few things about him. But yeah, maybe she's not considerate of him. But you gotta think too, how considerate has he been of her?
He's been a pretty big dick this season.
Yeah.
So,
but I really reacted well to, as a viewer, reacted well to Cassidy finally just being like, oh, you mean Dennis, the one you wouldn't help? Like I was like, oh, finally that's gonna come out, you know?
Yeah.
So
and I was disappointed that it gets undercut with Jesse's epiphany. Like I wanted more of that to kind of be like like that. I hope that still comes to some kind of head.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it has yet. Maybe it's brewing, and it'll come. It'll be brought up again for sure. Because maybe something's going to happen with the Cassidy Dennis thing, and then it's all just going to be out there.
Yeah. Nick, what'd you think?
I think what we're seeing is 3 very damaged people, and in a lot of TV shows, I think we generally see more of like one heavily damaged person and then some more well-rounded people that are a little more balanced, that can
offer support and
that kind of even things out a bit. And it's frustrating to watch them interact because they all clearly need to talk to each other, but nobody's talking to each other. And the juxtaposition of, I don't know why I froze mid-word. I was like trying to remember the rest of my thought. The juxtaposition between what Tulip does and doesn't know about Jesse, and I don't think she knows that stuff. I think she knows about Jesse's life as a boy when he lived with her in Annville, and then I think he moved away for 10 years or more, and then they reunited later on down the road.
Okay.
I firmly believe she doesn't know about what went down in Angelville.
Okay.
And otherwise she would say, why are we in New Orleans next door to Angelville? Okay. And as a result, she just doesn't know about that level of trauma. Like, she thinks she knows, but he has some real scars in there that she doesn't know about.
I wasn't necessarily thinking about Angelville, but mostly about like Jesse's father dying. But
right, yeah, she clearly knows about that stuff. But I think it's fascinating that there are these things about Jesse that you would think he would share with the person he loves, the person that he clearly multiple times in his life has thought he'd spend the rest of his life with, and yet hasn't brought himself to tell her for whatever reason. And obviously this is just part of trauma. People sometimes have a hard time opening up about these things, and even saying them out loud or facing them is
repressed memories.
Right.
And,
But then on the other hand, you have the intimacy of all this knowledge in Starr's office that he's just listening to as though it's intel, because it is. And it allows Jesse, it affords him this moment where he can have a conversation with somebody about it, and he doesn't.
Yeah.
Obviously, because Starr is a stranger essentially, and also just not a good guy.
And trying to manipulate him, yeah.
Right. Which part of the beauty of Starr in this show and the way he's portrayed is he almost comes across as like a therapist in that scene. Like as I was watching it, I was like, man, I want to see Jesse open up to him, and I want them to have a conversation. But then I'm like, wait a minute, he's evil. Like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? It's so funny that the show can do that, and the great characters and great performances can do that. They can let you let your guard down with them. Even like when you're watching Hannibal, sometimes you like kind of root for Hannibal, and you're like, wait, what am I doing? He's Hannibal.
Yeah. That's present in the first couple episodes. I'm watching it right now.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
You know.
Which episode are you on?
I'm on like 3.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, but like while I'm watching him, I'm like, this guy's put together. This guy,
he's slick as
can
hell.
Totally the way he's talking to Will Graham.
Huge left turn here.
Yeah, sorry about
Let's
that.
go though. Let's go down this road.
No,
just for a second.
We're done for now.
Look. What's funny is I told my dad the other day to watch Hannibal, and he's like, I was about to say he's like me. I'm like him in this regard, where he's like too stubborn. He's like, nah, it'll never top Anthony Hopkins. And I was like, you say that, but you haven't watched it. And I know I do the same thing all the time. So thanks, Dad, for that.
Back to Hair Starr
But anyway,
therapy.
rewind. Alex, don't delete that. I know I'm listening to this episode next year and go, hey, where's that Hannibal talk?
We talked about Hannibal.
We've been redacted. The spin is out of control. Yeah, but anyway, I think it's awesome that we get to hear all this incredibly personal stuff about Jesse, and we get to see this horrifying trauma that he endured as a kid, and just even a hint of it. And Tulip doesn't seem to be aware of it, and neither does Cassidy. And so that, well, obviously Cass doesn't.
Yeah.
But while in that scene, what they say does hold water. Like, yes, they have been sacrificing, so to speak, to be with Jesse. At the same time, what are they really giving up? First of all, like, what do you guys have going on that's better? You're not, let's not get on our high horse here. And Tulip stopped killing guys in cornfields.
And there's nothing stopping them from going and doing things, like having a life.
Right.
Really.
Yeah. And I think that their love for Jesse is obviously on full display here, and they're both frustrated by it, which I think is something we all feel at some point or another, where your love for somebody sometimes makes you angry because you love them and you feel obligated to do something you don't want to do.
They're stuck in a rut and you want
to
push them out of it.
And that's not to say that even only happens in unhealthy relationships. Sometimes you do things for people you love that you don't want to do, but you do it anyway because you love them. And that's beautiful. There's a lot of emotion in this scene, and yet all three of them are trying their hardest to suppress it, and they're just trying to say their piece and say, I'm angry, but nobody's interested yet in actually resolving anything.
Yeah.
They all just want to say, like, I'm mad at you and you. And all three of them are doing that.
Yeah.
And then it eventually comes to the two of them against him as he leaves. And he's like, you're not coming. And they draw the line. And Cass says, what did he say? He's like,
he's only after
you. Yeah. When the Saint goes back, I was like, oof, it's nasty. It's savage too, because Cassidy is both of them, both Cassidy and Tulip, after they're talking about heading down to the Caribbean or whatever. What is it?
Bimini.
I've never even heard of that. Is that real?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. I don't like the tropics. They're so excited, and they're both so lively, and I was probably grinning while I was watching it because it felt good to see them excited again, to see all three characters like happy for a moment, even though I knew that the hammer was going to fall from Jesse. But everything out of Cassidy's mouth for the next minute is just pure gold, and I was like, oh, this is so good to see them all happy again. But then 60 seconds later, it's that he's only after you, and it's like so sad, and he just like slinks away.
I'm extremely curious to see if sunblock works for Cassidy.
It's come a long way.
Yeah, he said something about that too. He's like, "Well, what am I going to do on the beach?"
Yeah, and then Tulip's like, "Sunblock's come a long way since you were a kid, Cassidy." And it's like, I would be so curious.
He just slathers himself, and
he's just like solid white. It's like when people put it on their nose, like a lifeguard or something.
Yeah, they just leave it there. They don't rub it in.
Entire body.
I loved when they were trying to convince Jesse to go anyway, and he goes, "If I was God, that's where I'd be." It makes sense. We should go check it out.
Yeah.
What you said about the three of them being very damaged people and unable to communicate. That to me, they're playing it so well that it's difficult for me to watch.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's frustrating though. It's how it would feel to try to talk to a family member who is like, you know, even though you love them and you want to help them, you get angry sometimes. You can't help it because you're like, why can't we just talk about this kind of thing? And and we're watching it times 3, and they're the only 3 people in the room, so it's like nothing gets done. They just stay angry at each other and they don't communicate.
This is the kind of context that I think is going to it allows me to look back at the things that I've been frustrated with in these past episodes and be like, it makes sense now.
Which is good, because I think that's also what time naturally does.
That's true.
Like, you can look back on old conflicts and say, like, either, wow, that was dumb, or you can say, like, I understand now why that person acted that way, and I know why I acted that way, and maybe it wasn't right, but how about we just both do better tomorrow, kind of thing.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Act 2? The fact that Jesse did make the connection about Humperdoo's drawings.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And the dog. But like, I guess, do we even really know? Maybe it was a coincidence or something. This could be
another
that.
MacGuffin.
Yeah.
I really think
it could be, but we talked about this in like episode 1 or 2 of this season.
Yeah.
We were saying that there's more significance to that dog than
even like, I think it was episode 2, because that's when the title sequence came back or something like that.
The dog was
like
in the title sequence.
Episode 3, excuse me. It was like, the dog is in the title sequence, so what does that really mean?
It was that close-up that
of the face
seemed to call some meaning to it.
Yep.
And did all the flashbacks happen there? Like, because you know what I thought? Did like when he was looking at the dog barking, and then like flashbacks of the dog suit, and then like the old man holding the tray.
Yes.
For some reason, I thought that was God, because like I was like, oh, like right under your nose, like that makes sense. But like what I don't understand about it, which maybe answered later in this episode by you guys, but is that everyone else knew that was God, because everyone's like, you want to see God? Let's take you down to the dog room. That's what they said, right?
Yeah, well, that was kind of the thing. I think I had this exact same question earlier in the podcast. It was like, why would Jesse ask to see God and be taken down to this sex show? Like, there's got to be something there. I don't know.
Well, it also almost implies, I mean, something about the costume and all that. It kind of seems like he's like captive, which doesn't make a lot of sense, because he's still God,
right?
Unless
he wants to be.
He wants to be, or all those people around him that were working for the dog show or whatever.
Are in on it.
Had been influenced by him the same way Jesse can influence, to kind of say, like, lead him here and see if he's able to look past this and see me for who I am, kind of thing. Like, it's almost a test, and Jesse failed.
Yeah.
So God moved on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm really curious to know where they're going with God. I mean, it's kind of the biggest character you can ever tackle. So Mark Harlick already gave it his best. I tweeted, or I included him in a tweet, and he has not yet responded, but he does not have very much Twitter activity at all. I think it is his account, though.
Probably.
I think so. He's only got like 600 followers or something, if that. It's really good. I hope it's him.
Mark Harlick.
I hope he gets back to us.
Beautiful.
We've already had our brush with fame with Michael Wincott's agent.
Yes.
We're on our Westworld show, tweeted at us, because all we did was talk about how good Michael Wincott is.
Yes, we did.
And we will continue to do so, even if he's not even in season 2.
He better be. Old Bill, come back.
Damn right.
Any other thoughts on Act 2? I liked the keep semen away from fur sign that was above the couch. It's pretty good. All right, Act 3. I wrote a lot here, so I apologize. While the superintendent is polygraphing the 50s woman, because that's all that I know what to call her by, the woman with the pearls and the glasses. While the superintendent is polygraphing the 50s woman and the caveman is blocking out the camera, Tyler and Eugene badger Hitler into showing his worst memory to them. Everything plays out the same as we saw previously until Hitler shows his artwork to the gallery dealer, who dismisses it as lacking conviction and being bloodless. Hitler returns to his seat when communists break in and try to badger the string quartet into playing their anthem, the Internationale. They accidentally drop a gun, which Hitler picks up and contemplates using, but he ultimately politely hands it back to them. Disappointed in his inaction, Hitler's lady friend explains that she wasn't actually helping her mother, but instead was out with Schulman, having a picnic by the lake, and that she's leaving to go be with him because he knows what he wants. Hitler is let down once more when the Jewish man who knocked into him and ordered after him is given the last plum cake as his worst memory ends. Both Tyler and Eugene misinterpret reasons for Hitler's starting of World War II, but Eugene still asks if Hitler will help him out. Hitler explains that there's a back door, but Eugene is called to be polygraphed as he learns this. Hitler then gathers everyone's attention to get their help when Tyler condescendingly calls him plum cake and asks why they would listen to him. Hitler then explains, because I'm Adolf fucking Hitler, with a non-bleeped F-bomb.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't catch that the first time through. I heard it.
Oh, it didn't strike you?
It did not strike me that it was not bleeped or anything.
Yeah.
Which maybe has more to say with, like, I wasn't watching it off of a cable box per se, but
Yeah.
if it feels like I'm watching it off of Netflix.
Well, it is interesting because Breaking Bad had F-bombs, but they were muted.
They were bleeped or there was a written one that was
kind of obscure,
pixelated.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
In like a note. So that's the crazy thing is that I feel like it's dropping even more now. But
don't quote me, but I think cable networks, you're totally allowed to swear. I think they just don't do it just to abide like with the FCC, you know.
Yeah, well, and I think that like because it's after 9:00.
Yeah,
as well.
South Park did that a lot. Yeah.
So. Yeah. But it still really caught me off guard.
Sure.
Because I was like, it caught me off guard the second time, not the first time. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
Isn't that funny that that's what's striking about the show is that someone said fuck.
Hitler said the F-bomb.
Yeah.
That's the big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess not that that's the big deal because maybe it is, who cares? But like it's funny that that's what that calls attention to itself.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa.
Maybe
now.
some of our international listeners can write in because obviously there's the whole fact that in Europe, you know,
sure,
like language isn't like that much paid attention to, but obviously over here we're very liberal with the violence, whereas they're liberal with the sex, and
sure, yeah,
like they're like oppositely taboo in media. But so we're back in hell, our favorite topic. So what was, I guess here's the thing, what was your guys' reading as to Hitler? Why this, like Hitler explains that this was the last time that he was a good person.
Some very weird definitions of being good in the preacher dictionary. It's like, okay, so if you're like a weakling, like you're good, or like that doesn't necessarily mean you're good, or like if you help someone pick up a marker, you're a good person, or that's a good thing to do. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, the definition of goodness seems to be very gray.
Yeah,
like is what makes somebody good, but I mean maybe even though he chose pretty much the path of least resistance every time, even if it was cowardly, it was still better morally than the alternative. Like if he had shot two communists in the restaurant, would everybody have been excited? Yeah. Would it have been good?
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah. Maybe. But Hitler. I
wish I had a GIF of your face that I could use on Twitter.
I don't think I could recreate it. I was genuinely thinking. Everyone wishes they had a GIF of my face in this moment. I'm really still at a weird place with the inclusion of Hitler and trying to make Hitler sympathetic. And I think maybe I still don't know what he's up to. I still don't trust him because there's a line in this episode, everyone knows you can't trust Hitler, which was really funny. But trying to make him sympathetic, I think, is just such a interesting project for these guys. And I just don't know what they're after, unless the only thing I can think right now, and obviously this show it's a lot of the puzzle pieces of this season are rapidly falling into place now. So it's kind of like we've been working on this puzzle and we've found all the edges and all the corners and we built that, and now it's just all of a sudden it's making sense and it's falling in. Which I realize this analogy.
We sorted the pieces by color,
yes.
and then now
all of a sudden we got a couple in, and then just
Yep.
and we're getting there. We got the rhythm, and we're plugging away at the puzzle. And the only thing I can think so far is that, you know, especially with what Hitler says about that's the last day I was good. Maybe ultimately one of the big themes of this is going to be that, you know, maybe everyone does deserve forgiveness at some point. Like, is there truly anything that any crime or act or deed that is beyond the point of no return, beyond redemption, at least in the eyes of like the people who matter, i.e. God, you know, according to what Joseph was saying. And, you know, and this comes up later, and I'm just going to talk about it now because we're already on the tracks. When Jesse kind of says, like, you know, he's done bad things, and he kind of says to Starr something along the lines of, as well as like, you've done worse things, kind of thing. You know, I'm sure you have. That's in this episode, right? Where he says like, you have. I'm sure you have too, or you've done.
Yeah, well,
Starr
has the line about like, and you could walk 100,000 little old ladies across the street for 100 years.
Not, yes.
It's
To
not,
make up,
and then he
right.
says you're going to have to do something big to make up for all the bad that you've done.
And then
Like,
Jesse kind of says like, I have done bad, and he's something he says to Starr, like,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you have, or I know you've done worse too. Maybe that was in a previous episode. Anyway, I think maybe Jesse wants to believe, because Jesse's done so many bad things too, that he wants to believe that maybe there is some redemption for him, that he can find his way back. And it's just the only thing I can think they're trying to say is that if Hitler can do something good, you know, regardless of what he did in his past when he was still good, if he has been Adolf Hitler and can still do something good to try to help somebody, does that absolve him? Not absolve him, but does he deserve to feel good about that? Does he deserve some sympathy? Does he deserve to be congratulated for doing something good? Or does he deserve to be cast back into hell? Does he have to pay the full price for what he did, according to who, you know, sort of thing?
well,
I don't know. This is very complicated.
and I like the connecting the dots of Starr's comment of you need to do something big, like the idea that Hitler would go through the trouble of defying the rules of hell to get somebody out of there that doesn't actually belong there. That seems like a pretty monumental, like,
Redemption.
yeah.
And is he doing it because he wants to get into heaven, or is he doing it because he thinks it's the right thing to do?
I don't
what
know.
These are the Hitler thing. It's making me think. It's one of the things that I'm thinking about the most in regards to this show, because as much as the hell storyline is probably my least favorite storyline, the Hitler,
The choice
quandary,
of using Hitler
is what I'm turning over in my head, like
Yeah.
trying to get a beat on what exactly is happening here.
And here's the thing, maybe much like my thinking about the crank noise, maybe we're reading into it too much. Like, maybe it's just maybe it was Seth Rogen being like, wouldn't it be funny if Hitler was the one that broke
If Hitler's
Eugene
a good
out of
guy.
hell, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and that is true. Yes, wouldn't that be hilarious? But
every choice is a conscious choice.
Yeah.
and and with this show, especially with Sam Catlin too, like every decision feels deliberate. Like
That's true.
And everything seems to have some meaning. So,
Well, and the literal name of the episode is Backdoors.
Mhm.
Hitler talks about there being a backdoor out of hell.
right.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
is Hitler trying to literally backdoor his way out of hell?
Yeah.
And into heaven
Yeah.
on a technicality.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Real quick, I love the titles of this season, by the way, because The Sopranos did that too, where each title episode had multiple meanings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, whenever that happens, obviously, it seems like it's very good.
Mm-hmm.
Man, do I love a good title or what?
Yeah.
Shit. I love when episodes
Mhm.
of TV shows have really enticing titles or something that the meaning becomes clear.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Also, very good meaning for the thing that happens at the very end of the episode.
Yes. Speaking of another backdoor.
Yeah, I thought I was going down a more
Focused.
discernible path with this Hitler thing, but I guess I'm still turning it over.
Yeah. We'll certainly have to revisit it when we know more.
It is just really interesting because even his worst memory scene, I think we all expected something more definite, and we probably all felt the way that Eugene and Popped Collar felt when they were watching on, kind of like that's it. Like
I felt like it kept going. Like I felt like
you thought there was still more.
Yeah,
I did too. But then it
like
ended.
it just kept on. Like it was like another bad thing happens, then another bad thing happens.
Yeah.
I
it was
see.
comically.
It was almost
Yeah.
too long. Yeah, it did feel like it took forever.
Yeah, and then by the very end, just the plum cake like was the last, I think, instance, right?
Yeah.
And I even kind of felt the same way initially as Tyler. Is that his name?
In
I was
the
like,
in
man,
the show.
Yeah, I was like, man, what a weenie. And yeah, I just
Well,
I do love from a writing standpoint what Hitler said. Like, yeah, I mean that was the last day I was good. That's why it's my worst memory, because he knows all the awful things he did now that he's had time to think about his crimes, and
It's a turning point for him.
yeah, exactly.
But in terms of I guess when I was trying to answer the question that Tyler and Eugene ask of why did you start World War II? Like, the woman talks about going to be with Schulman, who's presumably a Jewish person. The man who gets the last plum cake is also a Jewish person. But I don't feel like it's him. Like, to me, what rang truer was the fact that she was like, obviously, by the way that he reacts to the Jewish man, he probably has some kind of, he's got the anti-Semitic, that is in his person.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that the gallery owner is like, your work has no conviction, it's bloodless.
Yeah.
And then the woman says you have to fight for what you want in this world. And then she's also just like, Schulman knows what he wants. Mm-hmm. Do you guys think that all of that is Hitler was basically just like, I'm going to spite you people and show you that I can have conviction? Is that what started World War II for Hitler?
Yeah.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean,
He just wanted
one of those protesteth too much sort of things where he's trying to compensate.
He's overcompensating for things that ultimately don't matter. But
yeah, there was a line. Yeah, his friend that he was with was like, "Oh, don't believe a homosexual" or something like that. You know?
Yeah, don't
yeah.
hang your worth or something like that on a homosexual.
Yeah.
Speaking of the gallery owner.
Yeah. So all these things just kind of piled up, for him. Maybe at this moment where he was like, fuck the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there's too much more to say about that part of hell.
Yeah, not at this point. I think that there's going to be a lot to talk about in the season recap.
Yeah.
There always is, but in regards to this storyline, I'm very curious to see where it's going to wind up.
Yeah. All right. And then Act 4, Tulip leaves the apartment to go destroy the Saints' weapons with Jenny. Denis realizes Cassidy's feelings for Tulip and suggests that he, quote, take her, unquote, since that is what they do as vampires. But Cassidy gets very concerned and requests the dog back. However, Denis refuses. Jesse meets with Herr Starr to ask if he knew that God was the man dog, but Herr Starr did not know. He explains that it's not really that Jesse wants God back in his current potentially disenchanted state, but really he just wants forgiveness for killing his father. And it turns out that heaven has backups of people's prayers on reel-to-reel tape. They start listening to Jesse's prayers. The smelter that that Tulip goes to initially refuses to smelt the loaded weapons, and he can't even get them open. Tulip offers to shoot them to unload them, but the trigger won't even budge for her. So Jenny pressures the smelter into attempting to smelt them whole, and he does it anyway. While waiting for the weapons to be smelted, Jenny and Tulip discuss Jesse and the Saint. Tulip explains that she actually kind of gets why Jesse lied about the Saint and why he's doing what he's doing. Jenny pivots to wondering where the Saint is, but Tulip mostly dismisses it. Finally, the smelter pulls the gun out whole from the molten metal and drops it in Tulip's hands to show that it's cool to the touch, despite being in a 4,000 degree oven. All right. Denis and Cassidy, obviously we know that's headed somewhere bad. We kind of, Nick, you are already theorizing that maybe he's turned many people already. We did, Bruce wrote in a little bit about the fact that rules for turning have been, biting somebody or draining somebody completely or biting somebody and then having them drink vampire blood. Those are kind of like the main modes of making that happen, but we don't really know which one is true in this episode or in this show.
Dennis definitely seems to think we do what we want kind of thing. I did have a note that I understand why they cast that guy to play Dennis now, because when he enters the room with that little dog under his arm, his little swagger he's got going on, I was like, God, he looks like Cassidy. Like the way he's wearing his shirt and like the look in his eye, I was like, he's doing his best impression of Cassidy. It's very good. Like I really was like struck by it.
Yeah.
His posture and the way he just kind of saunters in there all cool.
That's awesome.
I was like, that's really good. That was a great scene. I love those little neck translators they wear. Those scenes are so fun.
That
to
was
watch.
Hilarious. Even
wow.
Denis turns his on to say wow. Just says wow
funny.
back. And then that was a great little like subtle piece of comedy that
and underneath something dramatic.
Yeah.
It was, and then the scene ends with like Cassidy like getting really pissed at him and like demanding the dog, and then we never really see where that goes.
Not yet. Yeah.
And I was really curious because it seemed like they were gonna fight. Like I was like, oh shit! Like Cassidy's had enough of Dennis's crap.
It's a parenting thing to do. It's like, well, no, you don't get that now. It's like you want to argue with me, you don't get that now because he gave him the dog as a gift.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I was for some reason I was thinking like in this universe maybe they can turn animals into vampire animals. Like, is he gonna make a vampire dog?
Oh, okay.
God. Maybe.
But that's probably not true. Yours makes more sense.
Let's hope not. Yours makes more sense. Yeah, I don't know. That definitely seemed like it came to a nasty place for a second. Like we're going to come back to that.
Like for some reason, it felt to me that Cassidy realized Denis' intentions with the dog or something like that. But I don't.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know what that would be.
Yeah, we'll see. But I really liked that exchange. I like the idea that like that's what we do. Like, we take what we want. Interesting.
Yeah, Cassidy in love with Tulip. Yeah.
Yeah.
And denying it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Denis' complete misinterpretation of what you should do with that love.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
We'll see where that goes.
So then we get a little bit of Starr stuff, of course. I like that Jesse called him the man dog.
Mm-hmm.
God was the man dog. Yeah, I guess we're going to talk about it more with the prayer tapes.
What was next in the recap? That was a big one. What was after?
It was a big
Denny,
one.
Was it the smelter, etc.?
Smelter, yeah.
Well,
the first part.
The Starr happens a little bit in between.
Okay.
So, but we'll come back to that more later on. The smelter won't smelt those loaded weapons, of course, which is a good rule of thumb.
Good policy.
Yeah, but the idea that the Saints' weapons don't burn, melt.
They don't even get hot.
Yeah, they don't even get
conduct
hot.
heat.
Although, but that's the weird thing is that obviously when Jesse would touch the bullets, I don't know, was that because they were just recently fired or was it because
they have hell properties?
Yeah.
I don't know. That scene was cool. That was a neat detail. Featherstone, so she goes through 3 different manipulation tactics in a row, bam, bam, bam.
Mm-hmm.
And all of 3 of which are pretty clever. And Tulip doesn't seem to be like, you little quiet as a mouse Jenny from the end of the hall, knows how to extort someone this hard like that. some red flags flying all over the place, and Tulip seems to just kind of be.
Well, she's dropped the fact that Jenny called her on stealing cars in Dallas as well from the previous episodes.
Yeah,
so,
she covered herself pretty well.
Which was ingenious. Yeah, and that was very cool. But I don't know. Maybe Tulip just needs a friend at this point, and she just is willing to overlook it. And Tulip's probably also thinking like, who am I to judge? Look at me.
That's
she
true.
hangs out with some types, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a nasty thing for Featherstone to prey on. But we know she's a piece of work.
We see Featherstone sitting there trying to continue to just drive these wedges in, and then she realizes that the Jesse thing's going nowhere because Tulip's kind of like, well, I kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah, that was such a relief. I was so happy to see a little shade of old Tulip come in there, even the way she kind of carries herself in that moment. Her little head moves she does. She's like, I get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would do the same thing.
You do a great Tulip impression.
That's awesome.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, guys. That means a lot. Just those little quirks she has. She was walking through this show like a zombie for a few episodes in a row there, and so it's nice to see her kind of come back a little bit. And I was just like, wow, that's the glimpses of the old gang we saw in this episode were so enticing. I just want to see them come back, and we're not headed for that, I don't think. So
yeah,
it makes it
still haven't hit bottom,
right?
But and then obviously Featherstone pivoting to be like, well, the Saints out there. She's just trying everything to be like,
yeah. And that's the thing. It's so apparent. It seems so transparent to us, and I'm like, come on, Tulip, you're smarter than this.
Yeah,
you're smarter than Jesse and Cassidy. let's get together here.
Yeah. Any other thoughts here? There were some shots. So when Hairstar's pulling out the tape recorder, of course, there's a shot that I've noticed. I noticed it a lot in American Horror Story, but they've been doing it in this show too, where you get the extreme
with the
close
split
up.
diopters.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is that?
A split diopter.
How does that work?
It's a piece of glass that you put in front of a lens. Usually it's actually it's like a filter.
So you're swapping focal lengths. Are you?
You are magnifying something essentially. It works kind of like a magnifying glass, or almost like a bifocal, or like a corrective lens. So basically, if it's like a circular filter like this, half of it will be empty.
Yeah.
Just the wireframe of it, and then the other half is the piece of glass to a varying thickness depending on what you're trying to achieve. So one half of your frame will be whatever lens you have on there, just shooting straight through, and the other half is a piece of glass in front to put something that's extremely close focus in focus. So you're essentially cheating, because lenses all have a minimum focus.
Yeah.
There's a minimum distance you can be for something to be in focus. You're essentially cheating that. So you can, and just the mechanics of lens. I mean, even if you have a lens stopped all the way down and you have the greatest depth of field possible, you still can't have your background and your foreground in focus unless you're on a very wide lens and you've compressed the space enough.
Yep.
But a split diopter basically lets you cheat that. They don't use them a lot in modern stuff because you can see
the blur.
the line.
Yeah.
But Jaws has a lot of split diopter shots that are really cool. Lots of old films do. There's actually a big list and a big article I read a while ago about them that was really neat.
I think American Horror Story.
What's that?
Lord of the Rings did it.
Yeah, like a lot cleaner though.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they cleaned up the blurs in post or what, but American Horror Story Season 2 does it a ton, and it's so cool because you can get very close. It allows for really crazy perspectives. And sometimes it's just for practical effect, like, okay, I want to have both these things in focus, but sometimes it's for, you want to have something extremely, like, which season of American Horror Story? Are you still on one?
I mean, we watched Coven, which is 3.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Yeah.
So that was where, that was the first show where I really noticed it happening. So it's kind of weird to me that it's kind of like.
You haven't watched season 1 yet, or
we watched a little bit of it.
Okay.
Oh man!
But it's happened in that too.
Season 2 of American Horror Story is where they really start to find their aesthetic, where they start using really wide lenses and lots of Steadicam and split diopter stuff. They use crazy wide lenses. Season 2 is where they really start to, and then it carries throughout the show, which I think is really, really cool. There's a ton of it in season 5 also. But anyway, I actually had a note about that because I saw it right away, and I was like, oh, that's cool they're doing that.
Yeah. I was very interested to ask you about it, so thank you very much for explaining. But
I love, man. There are so many moments in the show where I'm like, the cinematography is just so rad.
Yeah,
it's so cool. There's stuff that I'm like, they don't have to do it. That's the best part. They don't have to. They want to, and I think that's just fantastic.
I think Sam Catlin brought some of that from his Breaking Bad days, because Vince Gilligan's a very cinematographically curious person, and obviously like knows his stuff and wants to do interesting things. And they hire the directors that want to
they want to
figure
play
out. Yeah,
and that's what separates real artists from just workmen.
Yeah,
and not that there's anything wrong with that. There's a good strong director who can tell a story well and not have to get visually crazy, but there are those certain directors and DPs who want to strive to really make something that visually stands apart. And this show consistently since season 1 has done that.
Yeah.
It's had just really dynamic stuff. And I think it's just phenomenal.
So just in a little bit more on the technical side, in that shot of Hair Starr and Jesse, do we actually have Starr closer to the camera? Or is he actually closer to Jesse, but the image is magnified to keep them at the same
he's
focal...
He's probably closer to the camera than he normally would be, at least. And they may have blocked his shots so that if this is the camera shooting this way, he's here and he walks this way.
Yeah.
He may walk slightly away from the camera, but although he probably, if you go back and watch it, he probably goes out of focus when he crosses the frame. Because I know he's in focus there, and then he crosses, he goes to the left.
Yeah.
And he probably falls out of focus when he crosses over the middle of that diopter.
Okay.
But I don't know for sure. Because you do see the line where it's basically not focused.
Yeah. Well, hopefully listeners enjoyed that.
Yeah, there's
corner.
by all means, and this is going to probably be mentioned more than once, but watch American Horror Story if you haven't. It's so awesome. But season 2 in particular, I love season 2, but a big part of it was because they really started to push themselves visually, and there's some crazy stuff in season 2.
Yeah.
Including James Cromwell.
Yeah, he's in it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, he is.
And the last thing I want to mention, that the smelting place is called Mario's Smelt Shop, with the tagline, "You dealt it, we smelt it." Fantastic.
Great.
Fantastic. Just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I saw a Porta-John truck go by a couple weeks ago, and it just stands out in my memory that they're on the side of the truck. It said, "Yesterday's meals on wheels."
Oh God!
This is in real life.
Oh wow!
And I was like, "Oh, that's fantastic."
Oh man,
good for them.
It's a good way to be memorable.
You gotta own it. Yeah, own it, man.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what you do.
All right, Act 5. I actually forgot to write the little recap here, so I'm gonna do it a little bit on the fly. Let's see how good I am at this. Eugene gets examined by the superintendent, and then obviously they get distracted by Hitler's kumbaya distraction back in the in the bunk room. Hitler shows up into the office to open up the hole because the back door is down in the hole, and he pushes Eugene and follows him in. Tulip attempts to send the weapons to Brazil in a mailbox and ultimately fails because the sword sticks there and through the mailbox. Although we didn't follow up on that. I don't really know what's going on
where
with
they're
that
going
yet.
to go.
Yeah.
But, I have a feeling the Saint is kind of attuned to them, so I think he might.
Oh, he's gonna tear the back out of that mailbox or the mail truck or something.
Getting into Thor's hammer territory.
Yeah. Well, I'm willing to be. He's not just gonna go like this and then come flying to him, which would be the shit. He just comes out of the truck and thrusts his hands in the air, and the pistols fly through the windows, and
the sword just finds its sheath.
But they shoot it real shitty. They pull it out with a string, and they just play it backwards, so it awkwardly just shoots in.
That would be wonderful.
I would do it.
It just looks like an action figure.
This is why we're not shooting this show.
Yeah, that's true.
These are our ideas. Yeah, and Graham McTavish starts with the pistols and throws them away, and they just play the shot in reverse, so he catches them.
That's great.
That's what they should do.
So we did get to see Jesse actually listening to some of his prayers, including things like "Forgive me for sassing my daddy," which was my favorite for some reason.
Yeah.
Forgive me for shooting that Komodo dragon was also a good one as well.
Call back.
But then also we get Hair Starr. I did write down the quote. He said, I imagine you could take 100,000 little old ladies and walk them across the street for 100 years. That still wouldn't make up for what you did. I'm fairly certain the quote you were talking about is actually in there. I just can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was this week or last week where he basically says like
you've done worse.
Because it may have been in the car too. He may have said like a lot of bad things. You've probably done more than I have or something like that. Anyway,
yeah.
It was recently.
Explaining why he shouldn't take over for God or something like no.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's in there somewhere.
Then we also cut back to the swamp. We get the coffin coming out of the water once again. The older woman asks Jesse what his name is. He finally says Jesse Langell. And then the older woman says, and Jesse says, thank you, God, for killing my father and bringing me home. She reveals that she's Jesse's grandma and that they're at the Angelville Gator Tours. So,
yeah. Nasty.
A few more things. Starr obviously went through a lot of trouble. Jesse notices that. But Jesse uses the word to make Starr shove the tapes up his ass. Speaking of that other back door. And then Jesse exits the office and tries to use the word to get out, but it doesn't work until the third try, which is curious. And then finally we get Hoover talking to the Saint in the Sakosha and then booking it out of the Sakosha before the Saint comes out.
Hauling ass out of there.
Yes. All right. So, I don't think at this point we care about Eugene. We'll come back to it when we know more. Right?
Yeah, there's really nothing to say.
Jesse listening to his prayers. And so, Hair Starr ultimately...
Wait, there may be something there. Hold on. I feel like there's something from Dante's Inferno or some other similar work where talking about the way out of hell. Oh, man, this is going to drive me nuts because it just popped in my head. Like the way out of hell or the road out of hell or something is like the hardest part. Like actually
the lowest circle or something.
Yeah, like actually the pathway out is like worse than hell itself or something like that. Like you have to be strong enough to get through that in order to get out. Oh man.
Yeah, that obviously makes sense, but I don't.
Damn it, it's gonna drive me nuts.
You'll have to think about it.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up
next
and
week.
Do some research. But anyway, yeah.
Is it long is the way and hard that out of hell lead?
Mm-hmm. That's probably it.
Yeah. It says John Milton, Paradise Lost.
Paradise Lost. There it is. Yeah, because that exact quote is in another movie.
Oh no, wait. Long is the way and hard that out of hell leads up to light.
Yep. Oh man, it's heavily featured in another movie. This is suck. All right. Anyway, I'll look it up and figure it out. But yeah, so I have a feeling like the worst is yet to come for those guys. Like, and Hitler knows. Like, he's kind of, I think he's braced for it, or as best you can be. But Eugene is gonna like have some heavy shit to go through.
If they're in the hole with the extrapolator together, like what is that gonna put them through?
Right, and how are they gonna forge ahead to get out?
Yeah.
Thanks, Lance, for getting on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Figuring that out.
So then,
is it from 7? Oh God, it's gonna drive me crazy.
Could be.
It is from 7.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
It was written in like one of the journals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that makes
all right. 7 podcast next week.
Yes. So Hair Starr and Jesse listening to the tapes. I like the Joseph's idea, like that. The idea that our prayers are on a tape somewhere is an incredible violation of privacy. But
yeah, because it doesn't get more private than that. I
No.
mean, your own mental thoughts, even if you don't say them aloud.
Well, yeah, but I don't know that there's too much else to say.
It's awesome and it's on tapes.
Yeah.
I had a note that said the Grail belongs in the John Wick universe because there's something very like analog and
everything.
tactile about everything they use.
And it goes along with what like Mike and several other people have written in saying like a lot of the technology surrounding heaven is very
Pretty
analog and antiquated in some way.
The phone.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
I love the voices changing. I thought that was really cool.
That was very cool.
That's another thing that they really didn't have to do. They could have separated all of them, I'd say, but the fact that they edited them all together and made you think that was from different times, was cool.
Yeah, like it could have just been. They could have just led up to the point where Jesse said it because he was still a kid when that prayer came in.
Here's a question I had: do you think? I actually was curious. I'm like, so do these prayers get to heaven, and are they sorted and like the important ones pushed forward to God, or even more importantly, do the prayers even get to heaven, or do prayers go to the Grail, and the Grail then hands the? Is the Grail a temp agency for heaven, basically, and they handle that kind of stuff and then, push it up where it needs to go?
I didn't think it was that. Like, the way that Starr kind of describes the need to have a backup. Like, he mentions we need to have a backup they needed to have a backup to make sure that nothing fell through the cracks. That's kind of what he said. Yeah. I think it was... This is somehow heaven's backup that the Grail is able to attain somehow. That was how I read it.
Yeah, because God, there's so many people on earth that lived and said prayers. God at some point couldn't answer all the prayers, so like they got recorded to when God could get to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. I'm curious how the whole thing works.
Yeah. Once again, one of those things that we might not get explained.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be. I was just curious, like, do these prayers go to the Grail first and then find their way to heaven, or does heaven like hand off their work? Like, is the Grail an offsite backup for them?
Yeah, yeah.
Or does heaven receive them and then hand them to the Grail for sorting and say, people need to listen to these? And
that's possible. Yeah, they just need warm bodies listening to these to know what's important.
Is it like, oh man, what's the name of that movie with Greg Kinnear? Where he works in the dead letter department of the post office.
Oh, Dear God.
Is it called Dear God?
It's called Dear God, by the way. I didn't say, oh, Dear God, just because I don't like the movie. I do like the movie, but it's called Dear God.
Okay, that's what I thought, but then I thought that was the movie with, it was a super old dude, George Burns. Is that
that's
Oh God?
Called Oh God.
Oh God.
And then I think there's a sequel, Oh God Book 2.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Dear God. Are you familiar with this movie, Alex?
No, I'm not familiar, but apparently Toby Huss is in it, so that's another AMC
Alex
connection.
is watching it now. Yeah, it's basically Greg Kinnear works. He gets like a job. He's kind of a loser, and he gets a job at the post office working in like the dead letter department, where like the letters to like Santa and God and the Tooth Fairy, they all go there to be like, and then they have to figure out what to do with them, or they throw them away, whatever. But he starts answering some of the ones to God to like to give people advice, or like maybe make them feel better, because he's like, maybe I can. It comes from like a place of like good intent. He's very well intentioned, but it quickly like
devolves,
it gets out of hand and turns into this thing. It's
it
a funny
sounds
movie.
Great.
Yeah, it's a great concept.
It's really funny. Yeah.
It's actually the kind of movie where I would not mind it being remade.
Okay,
like something like that, I think could actually be really poignant today. But instead, they remake, Repo Man or whatever they're doing.
Remaking
next.
Hellboy. You know that?
Yeah. I'm down for that. I don't think they're remaking Hellboy. They're making another Hellboy.
Okay.
You know. Do you want to give for that face too?
I just want to cut that noise out and make it a text noise or something.
I love Hellboy. I have a lot of feelings about this new movie. I'm excited. I think it's going to be great. But anyway, that's
email g2tpodcast@gmail.com if you want to talk to Nick about Hellboy.
Yeah, let's do it. Just tweet. Let's just tweet about it.
And then I guess Angelville, that connection there. Mike wrote in and was kind of like, that was the other big reveal that I wanted that I was expecting. Like, to me, it wasn't even really a reveal. Like, because Jesse had looked at that Angelville sign, I was like, Angelville, Wangel, like it didn't even seem like a question to me, really, which is
is that the reveal he was talking about?
Yes.
Okay, I thought he meant the god dog, the man dog.
No.
Okay.
So like that to me, for some reason, like I don't know, it just kind of like it didn't seem like that big of a reveal to me. So
yeah.
Any thoughts on the reveal of
No,
Angelville
I agree, but I think we kind of pounced on that pretty early on. Like you connected the dots on your own.
Yeah.
But gator tours. Alligators terrify me.
Yeah.
I hope we don't see any alligators.
We'll see. There was a shark. One of the images on the TV was a shark, and I thought of you.
Oh yeah, I don't like sharks either.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw a GIF earlier today of a second Grand Theft Auto reference of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Just a GIF of somebody. It was like a Grand Theft Auto player in the ocean, and like a shark comes at him and swims by. And I sent it to Gojo, and I was like, "Is this a thing?" And he said, "It's single player, yeah." And I was like, "Oh my god!" And I said, "I had no idea. Had I known." And he goes, "That's why no one plays single player. There's sharks in it."
That's funny.
But I was like, it looks so real, like in the video game. And I was just like, if I had been in the ocean, if I had been playing that game and been in the ocean, and saw it, I would have ran out of the room. The controller would have been through the wall, and I'd be gone.
Wow.
Down the block.
Yeah.
Sharks and gators, man. Whew.
Well, we might see some.
Give me the willies.
I think that's all for
could
this
Jesse use the
episode.
word on a gator? Can you use the word on animals?
Yeah.
Probably not.
I don't know if there's any precedent for that.
Understand.
Do they have souls?
Yes.
Do they speak English?
Yeah, right. That's a big one.
Bigger question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what if Jesse uses the word on somebody who doesn't understand English?
What about a parrot? Would it work on a parrot? If he said the word to a parrot and the parrot
would the
repeated
be able to use the word on somebody?
Okay, so can we, wait before you're done.
If
So
Jesse recorded the word,
using the word on those secretaries, it didn't work until the third time. Like, what's going on? You know?
Yeah.
So
I totally
that was a
forgot to
little.
touch on that.
I'm glad you brought that up. Was he using it the first two times?
Yes.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I was a little.
I think he was
unclear to me.
trying to, like, at least they put some effect on the voice.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you watch the subtitles, it says like echoing.
Okay.
Oh, if he had
So-
red eyeballs, this wouldn't be a problem.
right.
Show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. It feels a little bit like a Spider-Man 2 situation going on where he loses the ability to use the word for some reason.
That's awesome.
But
Because we know it works on Starr, but I don't know.
are the minions soulless?
I'm kind of late to this, but I wanted to mention it before. But every time I see Starr's face when the word is used on him, I'm thinking that it's not working.
Is he playing along with it?
Yes, that's what I'm
a great
thinking.
point because it's very blatantly even when as you were saying that, I thought back to Jesse asking him about the man dog, and
he just kind of, you know how everyone else reacts to the word? They're like, "Oh my god, like you just did that to me!" Like I have no control. Like when Tulip was pushed out of the room, but Starr doesn't move very much. And I'm like, he could be.
That's an awesome theory, except he's still cramming tape ribbon up his ass. While Jesse's not there.
While he's not there, yes. But you know what? He may be trying to experience something. He also may be trying. He's like, maybe I should do this.
It may just be that, Hair Starr didn't really react to being raped. So maybe he just isn't a guy who reacts very much.
Yeah.
That would be cool, though.
Back in The Messiah, when he saw The Messiah, he was like, "Did you know?" or something like that. And then he says, "No, I didn't." And then Jesse uses the word, and then he's like, "No." Like, it's very calm.
Well, but here's the other thing is that every time Jesse's using it on him, he's telling the truth the first time that Jesse asks.
There you go.
Too.
Yeah.
So maybe
it's just not the answer Jesse wants. But it turns out it's the truth.
Yeah.
He says, he asks him, "Did you know?" And he says, "No, I didn't."
Mm-hmm.
How does he say it?
He says, "What?"
How does he say it?
No. I don't know.
I just don't want to go a week without hearing Lance's impression of Hair Starr.
Yeah.
It came through in that one
I
word.
Didn't.
No. He's so good.
He says something good to Hoover in the beginning of the episode, something like, "Make sure you're not the man," or something like. He's like, what does he say? Something like, "You're the only man that's around." But do I have to? I don't know. It was a threat.
It's kind of it's a line.
Oh, yeah, right at the end,
Yeah.
right as Hoover's walking out. Yeah, that was good too.
Yeah.
I think he basically said, didn't he kind of basically say, "Make sure you're not the last man standing"?
Make sure you're not the
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
It was good. God,
Yeah.
Hair Star's so good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've gone extremely long.
Hella long.
Yes. So once again,
these next two are probably going to be long too.
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot,
I know.
There's a lot happening.
Once again, you can find more episodes of our podcast on g2tpodcast.com. That's the letter G, number 2, letter T, podcast.com. We're also on TV Time, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Music. We're G2T Podcast on Twitter, and you can email us at g2tpodcast@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our podcast and share your thoughts on AMC's Preacher so we can read them on our show. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Preacher or our podcast. The Midwest Podcast Network has other shows about video games, horror movies, and HBO's Westworld. Find out more about these shows as well as how to support the network at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. We did just record a Midwest Film Nerds episode about The Dark Tower and many other movies that came out this year, so please go check it out. Our theme music is the song All In by The Red Thread and is being used under a non-commercial Creative Commons license. And that's all for this episode of Gone to Texas. We can't wait to see what next week's episode of Preacher brings, but until then, go forth and speak the good word.